The Oscars currently have 24 categories, and some of those categories get a little more attention and shine than others. Some of them, I mean, like, it's easy to focus on, your best picture. Acting awards, especially, I think it's easy to have an opinion on who was the best actor in a film for the year. Or even, a technical area like maybe editing, cinematography, you might have an interest in. It's easy to focus on the big flashy ones. And even something like, costuming or hair and makeup, which may not be as popular, people may still end up kind of passively seeing those films. There are movies like Killers of the Flower Moon, Maestro, Napoleon, Oppenheimer, that are at least shortlisted for, makeup and hairstyling in this specific case. So you may have already seen those movies and then be able to see them nominated and think like, oh, okay, maybe that movie had the best of those. So even with some of the lesser popular award categories, audiences may have some familiarity. The tricky thing with the shorts categories, the three of them, documentary short, live action short, animated short, is that they're just a separate category of films that you're probably not going to watch like by accident. They're not big events that you go see in theaters, especially in the case of like live action shorts. They can be pretty difficult to track down, and even the animated ones are a little more hit or miss. So I think as a result of the extra effort and less availability, perhaps less publicity, the shorts categories kind of get passed over by a lot of people. And I think that's really unfortunate because I love short films as a medium. Short films are one of the main reasons I like old silent movies to begin with. Like, I love old shorts. That was one of the reasons I got enthusiastic about that era to begin with. And then, even now, of course, shorts are still an excellent story form in their own way. You still have to put them together a little differently than other, feature films, but there's still such great storytelling possibilities in short films. And I love being able to celebrate them at the Oscars. And I hope I can just spread a little bit of joy and anticipation for the categories by going over some of the ones that I have seen. So today we're going to go over documentary shorts, of course. You can tell by the film title already. I went through the Oscars shortlist. I did not see every single one. There are a couple of them that are on Paramount Plus. I don't have that. One of them's on Max. Don't have that. One of them is only available in Switzerland, I think, if I read right, and not available in English at the moment. Didn't watch that one. But I believe I watched all the other ones. There may have been one other one in there, but basically covering 9 of them right now. I'm going to go through my least favorite to favorite in that order. And I'm just going to give a few notes on them. I will try to describe them and try to sell them in some degree or another. Some of them I have fewer points to sell you on, but, whatever. I will give spoilers, except for one of them, which I will note specifically why I'm giving spoilers for it. I'll try not to give too much detail so that the experience can still be there, but they are shorts, so I will be talking about a decent amount of each short just in order to cover it. Hopefully, if you see a little bit of an explanation of them, maybe it'll inspire you to watch some of them. And that's the goal, just to spread a little bit of awareness about the short films. So number 9 is Between Earth and Sky. This is a film about the ecologist. I'm not going to try to pronounce her name. Both her as a person and her work as an ecologist, studying nature's regrowth after ecological disturbances. So this one's a 50 for me. I think there are some nice visuals with the forest and, the locations in which she's doing some of her work. I think the film kind of showcases her personality pretty well. She seems like a very, enthusiastic, earnest person. And I think that comes through pretty quickly with the way she kind of, communicates, the way she interacts with people, etc. So it's kind of fun to follow her around through the film's short runtime. That said, I don't really love that the film tries to do 2 things in its runtime. I mean, it's only 25 minutes. It's hard to get much of a character portrait within 25 minutes, and it's also probably hard to cover the scientific subject matter in 25 minutes, and the film tries to do both, and I don't think either come across very completely. So it's hard for me to have much investment in either of the 2 films. In either of the film's 2 goals. So, for me, this was a no-go, but I don't regret watching it by any means. Number 8, Island in Between. In this film, the filmmaker recounts the history of the island of Kinmen and its relationship to both Taiwan and China. Another 50 in my book. There are some pretty nice shot choices, some storefronts, some darkened streets. At the end, there's a series of shots relating to the island that are all really nicely composed and have nice color and everything like that. So that's my favorite aspect of it. And again, this one feels like it just doesn't get far enough into its subject matter to feel impactful, to feel like it's worth sticking around for. There's also kind of an aspect of national identity and countries as corporations in a sense, which, again, I don't feel like it's communicated in a unique enough way to have much permanence. So the main thing that stuck with me was shot choices rather than subject matter, which is kind of unfortunate for a documentary, I think, in most cases. So, not the hugest fan of this one, but again, didn't hate it. It has its merits. It could certainly be interesting to some people to hear about certain aspects of Taiwan-China conflict and the two sides of that. So, could be interesting to check out as well. Number 7 is The Last Repair Shop. Last Repair Shop consists of interviews with both shop workers and students related to the instruments in LA County schools and the repair of said instruments and the importance of those instruments to the kids and in the lives of the people who repair them. This one's a smidge better, 55 to me. This one's kind of interesting because this seems to be one of the more well-received ones, so I may just have a specific qualm with it that I'm going to go over. This one's probably going to be nominated, I would assume. It's an interesting enough idea and execution, I think, that I wouldn't be mad about it even if I have strong opposition to it. One thing I do really like is the music. The music is very active throughout the film. And this is certainly the kind of movie you would want to have an active score for. It's pretty much always running. Of course, it's supporting a film that is about music and about musical instruments. I guess I don't remember for every section. There are basically 4 sections to the movie that talk about 4 different perspectives, more or less. And at least in 2 of them, the corresponding instrument or section of the orchestra is more prominent in the score. And it does change a little bit depending on the subject matter being talked about. So I think it fits pretty nicely. It is nice music. There's some bluegrass, especially in a particular section, that I think is really nice. One of the workers' stories is a lot of fun. It's kind of a wild ride to experience his background. Nothing against the other stories or anything like that, but I think that one specifically is just kind of a blast. And I think it also accomplishes its goal of connecting, the kids with the importance of having, in this case, an artistic outlet to communicate themselves through, to, aid them as they grow up, to provide sometimes some mental relief, things like that. So in addition to showcasing the stories, they also kind of show the importance of what they're doing, which I think is nice. So it accomplishes its goal well, but for me, the huge thing is editing in this movie. I think it's absolutely frustrating. It feels like they try to inject so much energy with how they're cutting, with the way they cut between different distances. The whole thing just feels like it's shot like a foot too close to everyone's face. Not literally the whole thing, but they will often use 3 different distances when they're shooting people, and 2 of them are much too close. And they cut to those a lot. So that frustrated me a lot the whole time. There are some other instances of the way they cut audio together between certain lines and omitting pauses at points that bug me a lot too. So the subject matter is a total plus for me. One of the reasons why I would not be upset with it or anything being nominated. But the execution I'm just absolutely out on. But maybe that's just me. A lot of people seem to enjoy it, so check it out. Maybe you'll like it more than I will. Number 6 is Deciding Vote. This is a short profile of politician George Michaels and his decision to vote yes on a landmark New York abortion bill. I give this one a 55. I think it's somewhat unremarkable, but not in a bad way, in terms of presentation, technical execution. Not much stands out to me about it, but it does run pretty smoothly, which is a positive. I think if you don't have specific technical elements to highlight, then the best thing you could say is it's just, it's on point. The editing is clean, the pacing is good. I don't have a lot to say about this one overall. I just think this one's a little weird because it feels like it can't quite commit to whether it's good to be representative of your constituents or whether you should be pursuing personal moral convictions. And I think to me that's a much more interesting question to pose than the subject matter that the documentary does. Not a lot to say about it, but I mean, it's an interesting story, interesting questions that can come out of it. So I would also not be surprised if this one was nominated. This seems like a likely candidate. Number 5, If Dreams Were Lightning, Rural Healthcare Crises. This is a film which follows a mobile medical care bus throughout the South, visiting communities and talking to patients along the way. I gave this one a 65. This seems to be, if I remember right, the lowest rated of all the nominees. I am going to go into spoilers on this one because I have a couple of thoughts on why I think it's a little better than it might be given credit for. So I'm going to start spoilers now. I'll try to remember to note that in the chapters. So it kind of seemed like people generally had one main issue, we'll say. And that's that the film doesn't really offer any kind of solution for what it's covering, which is true. It does not suggest healthcare reforms. It is interviewing people. It is surveying the area. I think to me, it's the fact that it's mostly compiling like this profile of the people is actually the most important part of the film. The healthcare question is kind of just an entry point to talk about the people. There are, inclusions of certain moments of political references, certain political rhetoric that you would associate with, Deep South conservatives. Moments like talking about how, the immigrants get better benefits than we do. Talking to, a military vet. I believe military vets are still commonly a conservative group. At least the older ones, I suppose. So they're kind of hitting upon some of these conservative touchstones, or including them here and there. And they're, of course, contrasting that with the state in which the areas are in. So while the service level, the excuse to kind of get in there to begin with is healthcare, I think it's kind of examining the mindset of people who are being affected by perhaps the system they would like to vote for, or that they would like to see in place. Kind of posing the question of why do people not want to change their minds in light of them being in a system that may be detrimental to their health. I think the criticism of not posing an answer to the question can be a valid criticism. If your question is a boring question, basically, if it's something that doesn't really need to be addressed or explored, or if it's something that everyone already knows, then sure, it's boring to just pose the question and stop there. If the film was simply highlighting that healthcare is bad in the Deep South and people have issues with it, etc., and didn't pose an answer, I think I could be on board with that. But I think the bits of political ideas give it a little bit of a different layer that makes for a more interesting question and exploration than just, the healthcare is bad in that part of the country and people are struggling. So to me, that's why I would elevate it a little higher than perhaps the average rating might. Also, the film is not super inspiring technically. It's plain, but not really in a good way, I guess. Not in a super bad way, but I could easily see someone losing interest and not being drawn back in by anything, I guess we'll put it. Certainly not drawn back by anything technical. But that's about it for that one. I still enjoyed it. I think it's interesting in its own right, but it might be the least easy to get into. Number 4, Oasis. 2 brothers, one with an increasingly impactful disability, spend time together and talk about their relationship. Gave this one a 70. It's a good movie. This is a plain film as well. Not plain in a necessarily bad way. The film spends a lot of time basically quietly observing the two, the way they interact, looking at their relationship. And that's good. I think you need that. I think it probably spends too much time doing that. There is not a whole lot of, we'll call it content in the short. And of course that can be a good thing for the movie. It can be a bad thing, just depending on the context. And, like I said, you need to see the relationship. But I never feel like the more time we get, the more we learn, So that's my main qualm. It's like some of the time feels like it's a little bit pointless, like it doesn't add anything. But that said, it does display the dynamic well enough. When they do interview them, there is, some nice little insight into both of their characters, the way both their minds work. There is some nice piano score here and there. I think there's a specific part of the film in which the camera does a nice job raising questions about the future by itself without any narration, which I think is quite nice. So even though perhaps it's a little bit too sparse, I think the goals are right, it accomplishes its goal, and it does a couple of little nice technical things to bring it up a little bit more. Number 3, The Barber of Little Rock. This is about a man named Arlo Washington who is working to give his financially isolated community some means of financial success. Also gave this one a 70. I think this is another movie where plainness is a good thing. The presentation, the camera work of the town, the buildings, the houses, and where Arlo is working, it's pretty straightforward. It's simple. I mean, I guess there's some drone shots. Maybe that disqualifies it from being simple, but, you know, there are scenes where you're just riding around in the car, hearing people talk, looking at the surroundings. And the simplicity of those shots is exactly what you need to just get a view of the community, what the surroundings are like, the fact that, you know, it certainly doesn't seem to be a wealthy place, just to get a feel for the places that Arlo is working with. So to me, that simplicity works nicely. This documentary also nicely emphasizes the importance of opportunity, because of course, you know, not every opportunity is going to work out, but you're never going to succeed if you don't get the opportunity to begin with. So I like that point of emphasis for the doc. I think that's important for its message too. To me, this flow is a little chunky, I think. When it switches topics, it feels like it lurches a little bit. Maybe feeling more like a PSA, like a, not infomercial. I don't know what the right term would be. It feels like information first, film second a little bit to me. Not the end of the world. Like, obviously, I still think it's good. But it's certainly less of a smooth viewing experience than some of the other entries on here, I would say. But still good, still worth watching. It's great that people are dedicating so much time and effort to helping people. Number 2, Camp Courage, which is about a mother, made a typo in my script, about a grandmother and daughter going to a climbing camp to escape from the stresses of wartime life in the Ukraine. Gave this one a 75, and it's got a nice combination of both talking about the stresses of wartime and talking about the struggles of adolescence. And I think the main strength is the way those two things combine, the way it combines the struggles of being at war with the perhaps more understandable, more empathetic struggles of growing up. And the fact that someone has to go through both of those at the same time, you know, I think it's a pretty unique perspective on the situation. I won't go into too much more detail than that because I like the way the narrative unfolds, and leave that up to the film to tell you. Don't like the music, you know, kind of bland. There's also a section where it's kind of talking to a former soldier that I'm not convinced fits in all that well. Just a couple of little things, but I do appreciate the way the story is put together. I would recommend. Last one. I don't know how to pronounce this one. I'm just going to butcher it and apologize for butchering it. It's called Nǎi Nai Wài Pó. This is a short film in which a filmmaker spends time with his 2 elderly grandmothers. Gave this one an 85. I really enjoyed this a lot. This is on my top 10 list for 2023, and it probably won't leave. So I kind of want to start with talking about a different review I saw, and that review basically said, like, you know, in this category, we've got shorts nominated about book burning and, you know, generational poverty and basically serious topics. And then we've also got this plotless, silly short film about nothing with this guy filming his grandparents. I have 2 things I want to defend the movie on. First, movie topics do not have to be serious. Movies can be fun. Movies are art. They have the great capacity for meaning, for helping to understand humanity, and that does not have to be serious topics. Sometimes fun is good. Talking about fun is part of the human experience. People like to enjoy themselves. And the fact that a movie is fun does not make it less meaningful inherently. You can even have a fun movie while still appreciating a genuine topic, which I think this movie does. I think it's not just fun. I think it has some important elements that, I mean, at least to me, that I appreciated, and I think that can be broadly applicable. The second one is the idea of the movie not really being about anything serious to begin with. I appreciate a lot the presentation of, you know, older people. I think, at least for me, it's easy to focus on aging as, you know, just negatives, to think that it's basically all downhill from here. But I mean, the fact is that people live happy, productive lives until, basically the end of their lives. Not that it's easy, not that everyone has that ability to do so, but I love the presentation of these two older women as being joyful and productive because it's possible. And that's encouraging to me that, even when I'm 80, if I make it that far, who knows, I could still be having fun. So I think that element is great because it's easy to vilify aging, and having positive examples of it, I think, is absolutely not a waste of film. And then even beyond that, like, it's not leaving out serious topics or anything like that. Like, it doesn't ignore the impacts of aging. The film certainly spends a section of time talking about that, the reality of aging and death for these people who are sadly quickly approaching that time. It talks about that in context with their joy, essentially. The fact that they have to balance those two emotions at the same time with the certainty that they will be dying soon, like other people they have known before them. I think that's just a lovely picture of life, the fact that all of us have to come to terms with that at some point. Yet it's possible to still find joy in life despite, looming existential dread, basically. So for those reasons, I really found the film to be helpful and absolutely a worthy entry, worth filming, worth nominating. And then the other thing I love about the movie is just the aesthetic of it. Even from the first frame, the film is so warm throughout. It's got like this glow to it, this softness. It looks very inviting and like it mirrors their happiness that they still have. It's such a pleasant film to look at. Between the positive spin it's able to put on age and the aesthetics, like, it's just a great experience to me. I really hope this manages to get in, but I kind of doubt it. It doesn't seem like it has much specifically for the Academy to grab onto, but can always hope. Of course, if I had to pick one to win, personally, it would be Nai Nai. I'm kind of assuming Barber of Little Rock, deciding vote, Last Repair Shop would get in. ABCs of Book Burning, as I haven't seen it yet. Like I said, if it gets nominated, I'll have to circle back, I suppose. But that kind of sounds like something that might also grab a nomination. But who knows? I would love to see Nai Nai in. Beyond that, I don't really care that much. I'm not pulling that hard for like Camp Courage or anything like that. Any of the other four can be whatever they want. That's the documentary shorts. Hopefully inspired you to check out some of them, or maybe you already have. If you have, and you have your own thoughts on them, let me know. Glad to be able to champion shorts on here, so hopefully people can enjoy them.